Hello, BookTube. Among the many BookTube events that are taking place in August is one created by the Bookish Bryants called August Amour. It follows in the line of many events that they've done recently, which are all about book genres of fiction. And a lot of those events, of those previous events of the previous genres, have been quite enjoyable. And in August, the genre up is romance. August Amour. I will leave a link down below to all of my co-hosts for this event. It's a lot of fun. It's, of course, designed to highlight some romance, but it's also designed, very intentionally to maybe get you to read a romance or two. Romance as a subgenre of fiction is by far the most despised and condescended to of any fiction genre. There are people out there who consider themselves to be very, very energetically exploratory readers who would never read a romance novel. It's an absolute given of their reading world. It's one of the few things they don't ever question or think about. I used to be one of those people. So I know what that's like, but it's not good. You're missing a lot of fun that way. So of course I'm going whole hog into August Amour. And of course another BookTube event that's taking place in August is Garb August, a celebration of trash. And if you were to ask most general interest readers, they would say that romance is just by its nature trash. That any romance that you read will be trash. That isn't true. Of course, that isn't true of any genre. But there can be overlap, right? There can be romance that is trash. There can be science fiction or fantasy that's trash. So maybe some of the books that I read for August Amour will also be books that I'm reading for Garb August, though I don't know it. And the reason I won't know it is because I'm going to arrange my reading for the month for August Amour along the tracks that it runs anyway. Those of you who might be new to my channel, I am a book columnist, a book editor, a book reviewer, and I mostly read new releases. That's mostly what I do. In a wide variety of genres. All of the genres that interest me. So I thought I would show you a chunk of what I will be reading for August Amour that is romances coming out in the month of August. I'll do some rereading, sure, some older stuff, but there's so many romances coming out every month. So many. Self-published, mainstream published, everything. That I could do some rereading. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of romance novels here, but it would be a more responsible use of my time to just read new releases. So I want to show you some new releases in romance coming out in August that I got the covers all together, and once I was done with that, I realized that it inadvertently shows the variety of romance as a subgenre. It's like Sarah at the Bookish Knitter, who's also one of my co-hosts for August Amour, has said many, many times that romance as an umbrella term for a genre of fiction actually includes everything. No matter what you like to read, there's something in the romance subgenre that fits that. You want to read historical fiction that has almost no hanky-panky in it? Romance has you covered. You want to read supernatural fiction, science fiction? Romance has you covered. Cozy mysteries, gritty mysteries, thrillers? Romance has you covered. The point being, as she puts it often, that if the romance element of the plot is strong enough to command the novel, to move it around like a chess piece, in addition to the trappings of all of that, the rest of those genre trappings, then it's a romance novel, no matter what else it's trying to do. She's entirely right about that. I hadn't planned that for these new releases, but they show it anyway. Like this first one is by N.J. Walters. I can't imagine what drew me to it. This is called Ancient Desire. This is not the first book in this series. This is book number 5 in a series. That's about, well, these are very steamy supernatural romance novels. But this one is about the main himbo character who's also a dragon, and of the ancient dragon kind. But they haven't all been like that. There's one with vampires, one with a demon from the underworld, that sort of thing. It's the thing, the brotherhood here that sort of links these main characters is them all being badass supernatural creatures. who are going to fall in love with or bond with a normal human woman. Usually that is the case. And no matter who is writing that sort of thing, that contrast can be very interesting. I'm not expecting the world building to be very heavy on a book like this. I'm probably going to be more titillated than fascinated. Then this next one, this is by Amy Clipston, and I keep trying with this particular splinter of romance novels, and I just don't get it. I know that Sarah does. She likes it and hosts co-hosts an event devoted to it, and that is Amish romance. I just don't get it, and I've often speculated that the reason why I don't get it and other readers do is because other readers have never met the Amish. I have met the Amish in Pennsylvania and especially in Iowa. I've met them. I've spent time with them. Theirs is not a romantic world. Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. Nothing about it is appealing. And I can't help it. I've often asked myself, okay, well, if that's the case, then why would it be so popular as a subgenre of romance? And, the answer isn't hard to find. The Amish are insulated and technologically simple. Very intentionally technologically simple, far more so than the Mennonites. They spurn modern technology, and they're insular. They're insulated. If you're doing a long bike ride across Iowa and you come near an Amish community, you will notice that the telephone wires that you've been following for the last 15 miles do not branch off. They just go right by that building over on the horizon because there's no electricity over there. There's horses and buggies over there. Maybe that's the appeal here, is that romance readers love the idea that of a greater purity, a greater innocence. I don't know. There's no purity and no innocence here. There's just depravity, sexism, and brutality, only of a different era, and not our own. But not understanding the premise of the thing, I still want to understand the energy that goes into these novels and how they get such devoted fans. So I found Amy Clipston, I think, has made a very good living writing Amish fiction. I'm not 100% sure of that. You'd have to ask Sarah. But I think she has. I think she's well known for writing Amish fiction. And I found one. One is coming out in August. It's called Building a Future. And there is a sweet, wholesome Amish girl. And the Amish boys always have suspenders and straw hats, although they're super hotties with solar flex muscles. And in the back, there's always a building being raised. The Amish are famous for that, for raising buildings with no technology that isn't, horses and ropes and whatnot. A lot of times in Amish romances, the young man will have experience with the outside world. He will be coming back to the Amish community. Why you would do that, I do not know. But in this particular instance, there is an element of escapism here that is missing me. It's just passing me by, and it cannot be just a simple desire to live in that world, as Sarah hilariously said in one of her own videos. I need to charge my Kindle. Thanks. Yes, me too. I have a whole bunch of things that I don't want to do without. So it can't be just a simple thing of wanting to live in this world. It's got to be more than that. I'll figure it out. Maybe August or more will be the time that I do. I want to get live discussions, recorded discussions, group discussions with a whole bunch of co-hosts. That's often difficult to do. It's often difficult to arrange. All the rest of you have busy lives and schedules and loved ones and children and work and community. I don't have any of those things. I don't have a life. I don't have any friends. I have only enemies and Deb. I'm not even wearing pants. So I'm free to do multi-part conversations, at least me and Sarah. But we'll see. I will hop on the Voxer group and start agitating, and maybe someone can explain Amish romance to me. Then this next one is right up my alley. Even when it comes to romance, I have a preference. It used to be the only thing that I read, but I've been broadening out. Watching Sarah's channel, for instance, has broadened me out quite a bit. I also knew a romance reader and who later became a romance author who broadened my horizons a bit. But for a long time, the only romance that I read was Regency romances, historical Regency romances. I don't know why. It's just a comfort blanket. I've since learned to love all kinds of romances, not just Regency. But I always read every new Regency that I get my hands on for any month. And some of them are less traditional than others. I have a marked sweet tooth for traditional Regency romances. That is where the emphasis is on sparkling dialogue, on the war of words between the man and the woman who are fighting, falling in love, the war of words between their mean and evil relatives or the gossips in the tong, and that all of the hanky-panky, all of the suggestive stuff is left until after the last page of the book. You're not going to see it. You're not going to hear anything about it. There's not going to be any double entendres or anything like that. Those kinds of Regency romances are basically not written anymore. For a long time, they held on, even when racier stuff was coming out. But I don't think anyone writes them anymore. Not for a mainstream publisher, certainly. This, I don't think, is a mainstream publisher. I think this is self-published. This is by Mary Lancaster, and I have read other books in this series. And one of the ways that you know that it's a modern Regency instead of a traditional Regency is that no man in Regency England ever looked like that, who was a member of the landed gentry. This is an earl. Debauchery and the earl. No earl ever looked like that. He's laying on fine silk, and the hair is about right, maybe, kind of, sort of. But the thing I want, the anachronisms, one of the many anachronisms that you find in modern Regencies, is that an earl in the Regency era in 1812, would have considered having a body like that to be a social disgrace. And so would everyone else he knew. That is the body of a laborer. It's not actually the body of the body of an Instagram model who has access to a Soloflex machine, but it's close enough to the body of a laborer. It would have been aesthetically unpleasing for an earl to look like that, in the privacy of his bedroom or otherwise. So you get a model who comes in to put on period costumes and do a photo shoot like this. That leads me to think that I know what's coming. These are the Gentlemen of Pleasure series. I think I've read all the others in this series, but I haven't read this one. This one's coming out in August, and I will gobble it up anyway. This next one is also Dragonblade, so I think also a smaller publisher or maybe self-published. And this is Second Sons of London series, and I don't think I've read any of the others in this series. Not sure that I have. Sarah has a much better recall of that sort of thing than I do. I don't know how she does it. You watch one of her weekly reads or a TBR of some kind, she's reeling off. I guess it's what she reads. This is by Alexa Aston, and it is dubious about the Duke. And from the look of it, I'm guessing that it's probably a little more traditional. There's no naked skin here, although I should point out, I don't want to be that guy, because I'm perfectly happy to enjoy these things on their own terms. But I want to point out that in Regency England, if a man who was not affianced to a woman had held her like that in public, neither one of them would have been able to be presented anywhere. They would not have got lines of credit at any kind of establishment. The man would not have been welcome at the routs or dances anywhere in society. That gesture alone would have made them outcasts from their world. Her, oh my God, the woman, 10 times worse. Even as mild a thing, what we consider as mild a thing as that, would have been the end. Just the end. You just have to go with it. You have to go with the flow with these new Regencies. They are often immensely enjoyable fun. They're taking lots and lots of liberties. And the liberties have only continued. In 2022, the liberties for these new Regencies have only continued. In fact, they've gotten, if anything, more pronounced. The main liberty now, spurred by the success of the Bridgerton TV show, is this wild fantasy Regency London in which there are extremely wealthy, noble black families with matriarchs and rebel sons and whatnot going up to Oxford and having palatial estates and whatnot. The Bridgerton TV series spawned that sort of Star Trek style alternate reality, and it was utterly delightful. So you didn't bat an eye. And I watched and didn't bat an eye at all. Maybe I hesitated for a second, thinking, well, okay, is any character in the continuity of the show going to explain this? Because this kind of needs an explanation. You might as well be introducing the dragons of Westeros. But no one did. And I realized why. After a while, I realized, well, this is just this world. This is the world of this show. It wasn't the real world, though. And so it's more and more divorced from it's more and more suspension of disbelief if you want to read a modern Regency romance. I'm perfectly okay to do that, though, if they're good. If they're as good as the Bridgerton TV adaptation was, I'll watch it endlessly. But this next one also strains credulity just a little, but the first book in the series was so good and got a lot of traction. A lot of people talked about it, that I couldn't possibly not read the second book. This is by Alexis Hall, who wrote boyfriend material last year or the year before that, and it swept everybody away. And this is the sequel, husband material. It's for the gays. You got to have something for the gays. And this is royalty falling in love. It continues the story of our two main characters. There are all sorts of secondary characters. There are all sorts of running jokes. One in particular, anyone who's read boyfriend material will know exactly what I'm talking about, that was hit a few too many times in boyfriend material, and it is sure to be hit over and over again like a Three Stooges routine in this book. But again, I will overlook that because talk about witty wordplay. This is heavily grounded in the modern era, in modern idioms, or what the writer thinks is modern idioms. But it's so charming. It's such a charming story that I don't care. I know that before I get to husband material, I might want to reread boyfriend material. I might want to do that, and that's not exactly a trial. Then this next one is another aspect of the romance umbrella, that umbrella that Sarah talks about. There is a whole strand of romances that are contemporary, but they are location driven. Still have characters, they still have plots, they still have the course of love not running smooth, but the location plays a big part in them. Is it a cozy little town where you're eventually going to get the romance stories of every single character in the town if the series catches on? Is it a particular coffee shop? And this is one of those, and it's the first installment in the series, so I have no idea how well the author will do. The author is Lily Mirren, and this is The Island, book one in the Coral Island series. They tend to look like this, and Coral Island will be an idyllic place that has a whole bunch of people with lovelorn stories that will meet there and connect or not there. And the point that I'm trying to, I mean, that happens in every romance novel. The point that I'm making is that the location will play a big part in it. You will start to feel like you know the main street, like you know the beaches, like you know the weather. And that has an appeal. I'm now reading a few of those and liking them. Maybe this will be a new one that I will want. I'll eagerly wait for the next one. Then this next one is a romance reprint. That does not happen often. Romance is a lot like science fiction in that it does not honor its forebears. So you almost never get reprints. There is no, as far as I know, again, Sarah would be able to know best, but as far as I know, there is no official mainstream publishing reprint line for romances that is just dedicated to reprinting great romances from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s especially. As far as I know, nothing like that is even contemplated. These things are made, tossed to the winds, and then a new crop comes out. But if there's one person who's going to get a Regency romance reprinted, it's Barbara Cartland. And this is Love Locked In from the Eternal Collection. And that number there, in case your horrified eyes are disbelieving it, is the number 302. Because Barbara Cartland was insanely prolific. Insanely so. And most of her Regency romances I have not read. They are unbelievably slight things. Just unbelievably slight. And I'm not talking just physically, although they are. It's rare that you'll find a Barbara Cartland novel that's over 100 pages, soaking wet. They get all sorts of ads in the back. They get flowery end papers and whatnot, but they're very slight books. And I have read barely a fraction of what this woman has written, so I'm pretty sure I haven't read Love Locked In. It looks like a classic Regency novel, although the dress is wrong. But it looks like a classic Regency romance. I'll certainly give it a try. Every Barbara Cartland that I've read has been very easy to do. I've never read anything by her that I didn't like, that I actively disliked. But when you're talking about Regency romances from your grandmother's generation, Georgette Heyer is so much better than Barbara Cartland, just worlds and worlds better. But this is coming out in August, and it'll take an hour to read at most, so I will give it a try. This next one is also a Regency romance. It's a modern Regency romance, as you'll be able to tell. This is Never a Wallflower, the series Never a Wallflower, which I think I have quite a few. I think I've read all of these. It's by Eva Devon, and this is Much Ado About Dukes. It's always the Dukes on the cover. And they are I mean, you've got the lovely colors and the swirls. The modern Regency covers are very nice, but he's got no shirt on. And he, we saw an Earl with no shirt on. Now we've got a Duke with no shirt on. So that's how you know that this is a modern Regency. I guarantee, whether the main character and the male and female main characters, whether they see eye to eye or not, whether they think of each other as mortal enemies or not, I guarantee you that before page 30 is out, they will have played tongue hockey with each other for an extended 3-page period, when that simply would not happen. And would have been considered, in the upper regions of the Ton, that would have been considered rape. It would have precluded any happy ending. You just can't harp on that. That's all. I am harping on it, but you can't harp on it. And I'm sure that will happen here, but it will still be a book about finding love. There'll be a lot more sex in it than there is in a traditional Regency, but it'll still be about finding love. I hope. Then this next one will be about finding love, I'm sure. This is not a traditional Regency romance. It is Regency, as far as I know. This is called The Runner and the Runaway. And it's about, I think, a Bow Street runner. Big, burly, two-fisted, tough guy of a Bow Street runner who finds his heartstrings tugged by a young waif that he encounters. But the young waif is not a young woman. This is by Mary Farmer. It's part of the Perdition Club. I don't think I've ever read a Perdition Club novel, but I think the Perdition Club is... I think it's a place where tough, two-fisted Bow Street runners go in order to browse the lissom young waifs, in order to find the one they want that day, or maybe forever. It has a gorgeous cover. I'm talking about the design, okay? Get your mind out of the gutter. But it is a very evocative cover as to what's going on here with the runner and the runaway. We'll see if it's any good. Then this next one is by a big name, Gina Showalter. And Gina Showalter, her bread and butter is what we started with, gigantic supernatural himbos. And this is the latest one. This is a Mortal Enemies novel. I don't know how many Immortal Enemies novel I've read, but I've read a ton of Gina Showalter. This is called Ruthless. And there is the questionable sartorial taste of your typical romance novel hero. Why is he wearing a cloak and a hood if he's not wearing a shirt or an undershirt? I mean, what's the point? Is he protecting himself from the cold? Obviously not. Even from here, I can see how erect his nipples are, so he's not protecting himself from the cold. What's he going to do with that cloak? Bundle up? But this will, I'm sure, be... Gina Showalter largely does the same thing as a bunch of other romance writers do, which is what we started with, a big supernatural romance himbo who falls in love with a more or less normal mortal woman. They never fall in love with their own kind. Almost never. We'll see. I vaguely remember the outlines of this series, but I don't think I've read everything else in it. This next one is also a big name, Sophie Jordan. Fantastic author. I love her so much. I've never read a book by her that I didn't like. This is her new one coming out in August, and remember I mentioned that one of the ways you can tell a new Regency romance from an older traditional Regency is that there'll be a little bare flesh on the cover. Yeah, that's one way that you can tell a modern Regency from an older traditional Regency. You know what another way to tell a modern Regency from an older traditional Regency is? If the man and the woman on the cover, in addition to bare flesh, are simply going at it. If the cover simply shows them shagging, then yeah, that's probably a modern Regency. And that's what this is. A scoundrel falls hard. Well, before he falls, he's going to do something else with a fire pit in the background. So you can sort of guess at the cover here, there's a fire pit in the background, but also an anvil and a hammer. So probably he's a blacksmith. I'm not sure that excuses his lack of decorum, but nevertheless, this is something that I have had to grow accustomed to when it comes to romance novels, modern Regencies, is that they're just going to go straight down to business. He is just going to go straight down to molding her wainscoting if he's a blacksmith, if you know what I mean. But Sophie Jordan will still be good. Remember I mentioned at the beginning of this video that a lot of people would consider romance novels to be trash just sight unseen. And that would be wrong. In the novels that I've shown you so far, I guarantee you there's a lot more effort, a lot more care being put into these things than is typically put into trash. It's just that it plays by romance rules. You can't read a genre without agreeing to the rules. And yet people do for romance. They don't for anything else. They don't for anything else. They go into a science fiction novel, they expect faster than light travel, ray guns, habitable alien worlds. They don't bat an eyelash at those things. They hunker down on how the book is doing those things instead of the very existence of those things. When it comes to romance, oh, why are you doing that? Oh, why are you doing that? Good luck sitting a snob down and saying, because those are the parameters of the genre. Okay, Smedley? You're okay with those parameters when it's mystery, or Tom Clancy action figure, or science fiction. But suddenly with this genre, you're not. Well, it has parameters, same as any other. So if you're not willing to allow that, you're never going to like these things. So don't try. But admit your double standard, is what I would say. But anyway, Sarah and I can go on forever about romance snobs when we do a live stream together. Even though I said that, some romance novels, they give off trash vibes ahead of time. None of the rest of them we've seen so far did. Not really. But this next one, this is by Honey Phillips. I think that's a pseudonym. It's called Artek, and it is part of a series called 7 Brides for 7 Alien Brothers. And no offense to the Bookish Bryants here. It's a tall, blue-horned alien. They are a staple in their own in self-published romance novels. I'm not sure that this doesn't say trash. I'm pretty sure that Artek is going to be trash. I think so. We'll see. I have not read any of the other 7 Brides for 7 Alien Brothers, and I'm not, unlike everybody else in the romance world, a fan of the movie 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. So this could just be the wrong hop for me completely. I'll give it a try, but probably not. And then we'll finish up with a vampire novel. Vampires are big in romance ever since, The Vampire Lestat, Interview with a Vampire, that was 50 years ago. This is a series called The Vampire's Mate. This is book 2. I read book 1 and really enjoyed it. It was a little too slangy for my taste and a little too scorching for my taste. I'm not a prude. Sarah also will point that out. She's not a prude. It's just that can get a little boring. You're not there for that. You have your imagination for that. You're there for everything else. The interplay of personality, the winning through of affection, the burgeoning of affection into love, all sorts of elements in the romance genre are more important than the scorching parts. But I like the first one well enough to try the second one. The second one's coming out in August. This is by Gray Bryan, and this is book 2. It is Soren. And there Soren is taking his jacket off in the middle of a forest. And much like our ruthless supernatural himbo a few books earlier, he doesn't have any other clothes on. He was wearing his jacket over his bare body. Don't really see what the point of that is, but this is about a vampire's helper. If I remember correctly, the summary, this is about basically a Renfield character. Only unlike in Dracula, where in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Count uses Renfield as a kind of mortal cat's paw. A being who can go about in sunlight, a being who can get things done. Renfield isn't particularly successful at that. He's not effective at all. A study of him is fascinating in Dracula, and he was the subject of at least one novel that I know of that was pretty good. Typically, in the 21st century, vampire novelists have thought, that sounds sexual. It sounds like the Renfield character belongs to the vampire as their plaything, not just their cat's paw out in the world, arranging hotel lodgings or whatnot, arranging victims, but also, maybe a plaything back at Castle Dracula or whatever. The first book in this series, I forget what the name of it is, but the first book in this series took that familiar pattern and did some interesting things with it. So I'm definitely on board for the second one. Whether he is exercising good climate sense or not, I'm definitely up for the next one. And that is our. We'll leave Soren up there while we chat. This is our. Oh no, we won't. We'll go to the classic cover. There you go. This is that is a snippet of my August TBR for August Amour, which dovetails neatly with my August TBR just in general. My monthly TBR at the beginning of any month is as many of the new releases in the genres that I'm interested in for that month as I can possibly read. As many as I can possibly do. To up my numbers for what is turning out to be a very healthy reading year in terms of numbers and a very anemic year in terms of standout reading experiences. That will probably change. We're only a little bit past the halfway point. Actually, we're a lot past the halfway point now, but I hope spring's eternal. But this is an idea. This is a bit of a TBR for August Amour. I will be reading all of these things, and I will be reading probably lots of other things too, certainly anything I get in the mail. But I wanted to do that and also cry up the event. I'll leave my co-host down below, and I'd love you to give a romance novel a try in August. There are plenty of them online that are free. If you have an Amazon account, you can find plenty of romance novels that are free, and not all the free ones are bad. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I've gone on way too long, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.